If you want to be like a master gardener, your first instinct is probably to head to the hardware store, buy a heavy gas-powered rototiller, download some kind of color-coded spreadsheet, and just start bossing nature around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. We have this deep-seated human need to impose order, to sort of conquer the chaos of the soil with blueprints and strict timelines. So, welcome to your custom deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, today we are going to look at what happens when that entire corporate project management mindset completely falls apart in the backyard. We are taking a stack of personal gardening notes from two guys, Kesser and Steen, and extracting the absolute best insights about working with nature's inclinations, rather than fighting them.
And I think the most liberating takeaway for you listening is that leaning into your own natural laziness.
Huh, my favorite kind of takeaway.
Right, like designing a system that actually expects you to procrastinate might make you a far more brilliant horticulturist than someone who meticulously manages every single square inch of dirt.
That is a philosophy I can totally get behind. Now, just to set the stage with a very brief review of the notes, a year ago, Tesser and Steen found some wild Ramson seeds out in the woods.
Wild garlic, for those unfamiliar.
Yes, wild garlic. So they brought these tiny seeds back, sowed them in a tray, and basically entered a year-long waiting game. Nature just operates on its own incredibly slow clock.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight in today with Kesser and Steen.
Mm-hmm.
They've got this plan, based on a piece called Ramslug, to grow wild garlic. Ramsons.
Right, from seed.
Yeah, from seed. Right in Steen's kitchen garden. It feels very them, doesn't it? Always finding wild herbs and things.
It really does. And wild garlic, well, it's got that lovely mild garlic smell and taste. It's great stuff.
But there's a catch. Always a catch.
Well, yeah, a big one mentioned in Ramslug, identification. You absolutely have to be sure.
Because of the lily of the valley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is poisonous and can look quite similar, especially when young. The advice is crystal clear. Check every single leaf, smell it, better safe than sorry, seriously.
Okay, good warning. So our mission here is basically to look at Kesser and Steen's plan, see what the Ramslig source says, and, well, figure out how feasible this all is.
Right, and the source does mention other ways to get it going in your garden.
Like buying seeds, though it says that might be a bit expensive.
Yeah, potentially, for like a wild patch in the garden. Or, those small pots of herbs you see in supermarkets sometimes?
Oh yeah, sometimes they have wild garlic.
Exactly. And the piece suggests if you buy one and don't use all the leaves, it might actually come back next year. Kind of a low-effort option.
Okay, interesting. But Kesser and Steen, they're going more direct, more wild.
Seems like it. They're leaning into the whole process. And you can see why you'd want a good supply. The source mentions Oma using it fresh in salads.
Well, that sounds nice and simple.
And there's a pesto recipe, too. Ramson leaves, Parmesan, apparently some chopped garlic tops. Olive oil?
Ooh, pesto.
Yeah, sounds great on toast, sort of tapas style.
Okay, now I really want some. Makes sense they'd want to grow their own supply.
Well, yeah, and the source touches on collecting it responsibly, too. Like, let the plant set seed, don't be too greedy when you're foraging.
Right, leave some for others and for the plant itself.
Yeah.
It also mentions something about public forests.
Mm-hmm. It says picking some leaves and even taking seeds is generally allowed, but the key is leaving the plant itself unharmed. Sustainability.
Got it. Okay, so Kesser and Steen's actual plan then, what is it exactly?
It's beautifully simple, actually. They're planning to sow the Ramson seeds they get into a milk carton.
A milk carton? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and then just leave it outside over the winter.
Just leave it out. Wow.
That seems to be the idea, trusting nature, the cold stratification, all that. Let winter do its thing.
So no fussing with indoor lights or heat mats or anything like that? Just out there?
Seems so. And the context is they want more wild garlic handy for the kitchen, right? Especially as they're building more raised beds at the moment.
Ah, okay. So it fits into that bigger picture of expanding the garden, making it more productive and integrated.
Exactly. It's less about buying a finished product and more about participating in the whole life cycle, from seed to plant.
Which is quite cool.
It is. And the Ramslig piece sort of nudges you to think about the effort versus cost, comparing maybe buying seeds or plants to this more hands-on seed collection method.
And always that reminder about identification.
Non-negotiable. Yeah. Absolutely critical.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Key takeaways. Wild garlic, delicious, versatile. Kesser and Steen are trying this really interesting low-intervention method of growing it from seed in a milk carton over winter.
Right. And while there are other ways, like buying seeds or plants, their approach is very direct, very wild.
But the absolute foundation, no matter how you get it, is being 100% certain you've identified it correctly. No mistakes allowed there.
Definitely. It does make you think, doesn't it, about how we interact with wild food. Cultivating versus foraging.
Yeah, and Kesser and Steen are kind of blurring the lines, bringing the wild right into their managed garden space in this quite basic way.
It poses an interesting question. What other wild plants could maybe be grown using unexpected, simpler methods like this? Something to ponder.
Which brings us to the present day. We are skipping right past that whole dormant waiting period because the action is finally happening.
Finally.
Yeah, those wild seeds are sprouting into little white bulbs with like a single green leaf. It is high time to transplant these wild Ramsons alongside some real cultivated garlic out into the backyard kitchen garden.
Which, on paper sounds like a completely straightforward 20-minute Sunday chore.
You would think so.
You would, but looking through these notes, moving these little white bulbs quickly turns into a hilarious study in family dynamics, an accidental masterclass in permaculture, and a total rethinking of how we manage our own time and energy.
Oh man, the comedic backstory here really sets the tone for the whole project. According to the timeline in the notes, Steen was supposed to be way further along with this transplanting project.
Right.
There was a significant, completely unexplained delay in getting these bulbs into the earth.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the guys joke in the notes that Steen's dad clearly passed down his marmot genes.
Marmot genes.
Yeah, he basically went full groundhog, hibernated for the winter, and just put the entire project out of his mind. And look, we all have a bit of that marmot gene in us when the weather gets cold. But the underlying biological problem is that you simply cannot hit the snooze button on Ramsons.
You really can't, no.
Yeah.
And that's because of the specific evolutionary strategy of wild garlic. Ramsons are what botanists call spring ephemerals.
Okay.
They have a completely different life cycle than, say, a tomato or a pepper plant. They have this incredibly short, explosive growing season. They pop up the second the ground thaws, aggressively harvest the spring sunlight, and then by early summer, they vanish.
It's completely gone.
Completely underground until the next year.
They operate just like the crocuses or tulips that suddenly appear in your front yard and then vanish, leaving bare dirt. The energy all retreats back into that hidden underground bulb.
Exactly.
So if the marmot genes take over and you wait too long to transplant or harvest them, the foliage is gone. You are staring at a patch of empty soil with absolutely no visual indicator of where these plants are standing.
You've missed the biological window entirely.
Yeah.
But that time sensitivity is really just hurdle number one. The notes highlight a second, much funnier obstacle.
Ah, the mother.
Yes. Traditionally, if you want to eat Ramsons, you don't bother growing them in a neat little kitchen garden.
Yeah.
You grab a basket, wander into the local woods, follow that sharp, unmistakable aromatic garlic scent, and just forage for them under the trees.
Right, but Steen's mother has officially entered the chat with a massive veto on that entire concept.
A total veto.
Foraging is an absolute no-go for her. Reading her objections in the notes is fantastic because it's just so relatable. It's like a friend refusing to go to an amazing outdoor music festival because they can't handle the thought of mud up to their knees. She hates the ants. She is terrified of the slimy snails out in the damp woods.
And beyond the aversion to the creepy crawlies, there is a very legitimate safety anxiety at play there, too.
Oh, for sure.
When you are foraging for wild alliums like Ramsons, you are walking through woods where highly toxic plants like lily of the valley also grow.
Right, and they look identical.
Almost identical before they flower, yeah. Their leaves look incredibly similar to wild garlic. If you aren't an expert, that damp, chaotic forest floor is an intimidating place.
It is a totally valid fear. But what's fascinating here is how that completely human aversion to the chaotic, slimy woods becomes the catalyst for a highly advanced horticultural strategy.
Yes, exactly.
Because of this strict anti-foraging rule, Kesser decides that if the mother refuses to go to the wild, they will simply bring the wild to her. He proposes establishing a permanent spot for the wild Ramsons right there in the garden, specifically planting them underneath the existing fruit trees.
And by making that one decision just to appease an anxious mother, they accidentally stumble into the core philosophy of permaculture.
It's brilliant.
They stop trying to force the garden to be a sterile, isolated row of crops and start mimicking the way a natural ecosystem stacks functions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Permaculture is one of those buzzwords that gets slapped onto every gardening blog.
Everywhere.
Right. But the notes give us a perfect practical example of what it actually looks like. By placing these ramsons permanently beneath the trees, they are creating what is called a leaf wall or an herb layer.
Yeah, and the best way to visualize this permaculture leaf wall is to think of a high-rise apartment building, but made entirely of flora.
Okay, I like that.
They are utilizing the vertical space. Right there on the ground floor, what permaculturists call level 0, you have your wild ramsons. Then stepping up a tier to level 1, you have your fruit bushes. The notes mention planting the garlic beneath blackcurrants, gooseberries, and red currants.
And then forming the penthouse, the canopy of this high rise, you have the low fruit trees. So you have 3 distinct layers of agriculture occupying the exact same square footage of dirt, perfectly mirroring the chaotic but efficient edge of a wild forest.
And the reason this dense vertical stacking doesn't result in the plants just choking each other out for resources comes back to that ephemeral life cycle we mentioned earlier.
All right, the timing.
The synchronicity of the timing is immaculate. The ramsons pop up in the very early spring, which happens to be right after the fruit trees and bushes have been aggressively pruned back.
So the canopy is completely bare. There are no leaves on the blackcurrants or the fruit trees to block the light, allowing that weak spring sun to shoot straight down to the garden floor and hit level 0.
Exactly. The ramsons have a monopoly on the sunlight for those crucial first few weeks. They soak it all up, do their rapid growing, and by the time the weather warms and the fruit trees fully leaf out to cast a deep, heavy shade over the ground.
The ramsons are fine with it.
They don't care at all. They are already done for the season and retreating back underground. They are essentially time-sharing the sunlight.
It is an incredibly elegant system. But wait, the notes specifically use the word permanent for this setup. They say ramsons aren't something you move around all the time, so you leave them in this permanent leaf wall.
Right.
My instinct, going back to that project management mindset, is to ask how you maintain that. If you drop them under an apple tree and never move them, don't you have to constantly intervene, like fertilize the soil, weed the area, manage the nutrients?
Well, no, and that's the beauty of a closed-loop permaculture design.
Yeah.
The system manages its own nutrient cycle. You are building an autonomous ecosystem. In the autumn, the leaves drop from the fruit trees and the berry bushes. Instead of raking them away, you leave them. They decompose right there on level 0, feeding the soil biology, which in turn fertilizes the dormant ramsons beneath the surface. It is designed so that human intervention is practically obsolete.
Wow. So the mother gets her fresh wild garlic without encountering a single slimy woodland snail, and the guys get to indulge their inner marmot because the ecosystem runs itself.
It's a win-win.
That is a brilliant solution for the wild layer. But that mindset doesn't have to stop at the edge of the fruit trees. Steen is also bringing that same philosophy directly into the traditional cultivated rows where he's planting the real garlic he brought home.
Yeah, and cultivated garlic behaves quite differently from wild ramsons. They grow in large clumps that divide, so Steen has to break these individual cloves apart and give them their own dedicated space in the rows to mature into full bulbs.
Right.
And this brings us to a major biological divide in the garlic world that the notes highlight: the difference between soft-neck and hard-neck varieties.
I was looking at the notes on this garlic divide, and it seems like it all comes down to how the stalk biology reacts as the winter approaches. Soft-neck garlic, just as it sounds, has a pliable, softer stalk. When autumn rolls around and the plant finishes its growing cycle, that soft green top basically dissolves. It withers away, flops over, and disappears entirely into the mulch.
Leaving you with the exact same problem you have with the ramson, a patch of bare dirt and no visual clue where your crop is buried.
Yeah.
But hardneck garlic, which the notes charmingly translate as being stiff in the neck,
Stiff in the neck.
develops a rigid, woody central stalk, often called the scape. Even after the leaves die back and the weather turns brutal, that hard little stick remains standing straight up above the soil.
Wait, if we connect this to the bigger picture and that comedic backstory of Steen's dad, that woody stalk is the ultimate failsafe for the marmot genes.
Exactly.
If you get lazy, or if the autumn weather turns nasty and you decide to hibernate instead of going out to the garden, that stiff neck acts as a physical locator beacon.
It accommodates human imperfection perfectly. You don't have to go blindly digging through freezing mud hoping your trowel hits a garlic bulb instead of, like, slicing it in half.
Oh, I've done that.
We all have.
Yeah.
But with these, you just look for the sticks poking out of the snow.
Yeah.
It is a biological flag signaling exactly where the harvest is waiting.
There is something very liberating about that, and it ties beautifully into a charming detail from the notes about Steen's grandmother, Oma.
Oma's wisdom.
Yes. The notes bring up Oma's organic Kitchengarden philosophy, which serves as a powerful reminder that the garden is not a factory assembly line. We don't have to harvest everything on an exact synchronized schedule.
Oma's mindset removes the artificial pressure we place on ourselves. If you leave some hard-neck garlic in the ground for an extra month because you got busy or because you just didn't feel like being outside, the system forgives you.
Yeah.
The beacon remains intact. You pull them when you are ready.
So what does this all mean for the actual physical labor? We have this highly forgiving permaculture philosophy for the wild layer and a fail-safe hard-neck beacon system for the cultivated rows. But how are Kesser and Steen actually getting these little white bulbs into the earth right now?
Well, despite the totally different end goals, a wild, permanent ecosystem under the trees versus orderly cultivated rows, the shared physical method for transplanting them is practically identical at this stage of the spring.
Really?
Yeah, and the way they plant them introduces us to the groff rehab concept mentioned in the notes.
Groff rehab translates to the No Dig Garden. And this is fascinating because the traditional image of planting a garden always involves back-breaking labor. You rent a heavy tiller, you rip up the sod, you turn over all the earth until the soil is loose and fluffy, and your back is just completely wrecked.
And the New Dig movement looks at that traditional tilling process as a catastrophic natural disaster for the soil.
A disaster.
To understand why groff rehab is so effective, we have to look at the microscopic infrastructure beneath our feet. Healthy soil is essentially a living organism.
Okay.
It is packed with intricate mycelial networks, these vast webs of beneficial fungi, and thousands of microscopic worm tunnels that naturally deliver oxygen, water, and nutrients to the roots of plants.
So when you fire up a gas-powered rototiller and chew up the top 8 inches of your garden, you are essentially hitting that subterranean city with a magnitude 9 earthquake.
Nice.
You are shredding the fungal networks and collapsing all the tunnels that nature spent years building.
Precisely. You are destroying the very infrastructure your garlic needs to thrive. In a groff rehab, you abandon that destructive heavy labor entirely.
Which sounds great to me.
The notes describe an incredibly gentle, almost lazily brilliant approach. You don't turn the earth at all. You simply take a small trowel and push the topsoil aside. Or, even easier, you just take a stick, poke a narrow depression into the earth, drop the little white bulb in, and gently press the soil back together.
So the structural integrity of the soil food web remains completely intact.
Yes.
The mycelium can immediately start interacting with the garlic roots. It is the definition of working smarter, not harder. But reading this, I have to admit my inner project manager flared up again. I found myself looking for the catch. Like, if I'm just poking holes with a stick, isn't there supposed to be a strict geometric rule? How deep do I poke the hole? How many exact inches apart do these bulbs need to be in the rows to optimize the yield?
This is where we return to the chaotic good energy of Oma.
Yes.
When it comes to the strict rules of spacing and depth, Oma's ultimate gardening advice is simply figure it out yourself.
Figure it out yourself. It completely shatters the illusion of the perfect Instagram-ready garden.
It is incredibly profound in its simplicity, though. The notes point out that Oma believes you should just find your own way with distance and depth because the perfect metric doesn't actually exist.
Right.
It depends entirely on what you want. If you happen to want smaller, more compact garlic bulbs for cooking, you poke those holes closer together, forcing them to compete a bit for space.
Make them fight for it.
Exactly. But if you prefer massive, show-stopping bulbs, you give them a wider berth. There's no universally correct factory standard answer.
Adding to that deeply relaxed, chaotic, good energy is Kesser's method for finishing these beds. Once the bulbs are in their unmeasured stick-poked holes, he doesn't go to the garden center to buy bags of expensive, perfectly sifted compost to dress the rows.
No.
He just empties the catcher from his lawnmower and dumps the fresh grass clippings directly between the rows as a top dressing.
And by using grass clippings, he is applying the exact same permaculture principle from the fruit trees directly to the cultivated rows. He is creating an instant, nutrient-dense mulch.
Let's look at the biology of that grass layer, because it's not just about making the bed look tidy.
Far from it. That thick layer of fresh grass clippings acts as an impenetrable physical barrier against airborne weed seeds, suppressing competition without a drop of herbicide.
That's amazing.
That acts as a sponge, retaining soil moisture so you barely have to water the garlic during the hot summer months. And most importantly, grass is packed with nitrogen. As it slowly breaks down and composts from the top down, it feeds those intact worm tunnels and fungal networks we preserved by not tilling.
It mimics the exact decomposition process of a natural forest floor, just using suburban lawn refuse. And frankly, with lawnmower clippings flying everywhere and being dumped by the bucket load, any remaining illusion of exact, millimeter-perfect geometric rows flies completely out the window.
Oh, absolutely.
You simply cannot be a perfectionist when you are dumping grass clippings over a no-dig bed of hardneck garlic.
Pulling all these threads together, this raises an important question. The deeper current running through Kesser and Steen's notes becomes incredibly clear. On the surface, this is just a weekend journal about transplanting some alliums. But underneath, it is a masterclass in designing systems for resilience by accommodating our very real human flaws.
They didn't try to forcibly conquer the mother's genuine fear of the muddy, unpredictable woods. They accepted that constraint and used it to invent a brilliant, self-sustaining permaculture leaf wall that provides wild food right outside the back door.
And they acknowledge their own marmot genes. Their inherent tendency to get busy, get lazy, or simply forget about a project when the weather turns cold.
Right.
Instead of promising to be more disciplined, they relied on the biology of hardneck garlic to leave a physical, woody beacon above the snow.
And they abandoned the back-breaking, destructive tradition of tilling the earth, opting instead to poke holes with a stick and dump grass clippings because it requires a fraction of the physical effort while actually preserving the biological health of the soil. The overarching lesson is that the best, most resilient systems are the ones that forgive human nature.
Exactly. When you design an ecosystem, whether it is a garden bed or a daily routine that genuinely expects you to be a little lazy, a little forgetful, and a little fearful, you end up with a structure that doesn't collapse the moment you lose your motivation.
Which brings us full circle to that massive whiteboard we talked about at the very beginning. The desperate need to conquer, control, and perfectly space every detail of our lives. It turns out, constantly fighting the natural current of the world and our own natural inclinations is an exhausting way to exist.
It guarantees burnout, both in the garden and in life.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. If we zoom out from the soil biology and look at our own personal and professional lives, if we start viewing our daily chores, our curated spaces, and our work projects through the lens of a self-sustaining permaculture leaf wall.
I love that idea.
Yeah, layering our tasks so they naturally feed into each other without demanding constant, exhausting intervention. How much unnecessary, back-breaking digging could we completely eliminate from our own routines?
A lot, I bet.
Probably a ton. Maybe it's time we all stop trying to be perfect project managers, embraced our inner marmot, left a few hardneck beacons for our future selves, and just let nature do the heavy lifting. Until next time, keep exploring. If you want to be like a master gardener, your first instinct is probably to head to the hardware store, buy a heavy gas-powered rototiller,